Hello, we are looking at problem 1 in section 6b here, and I hear you're having some trouble with part C, okay? So I'm going to kind of walk you through how I would do this. Now keep in mind with these problems, there is more than one way, so this is just how I see it. Okay, I'm going to pull up my whiteboard. Let me remove this previous assignment here. I apologize. Okay, so in part C, let's look at the situation that we have. We are in the beginning of the problem given that we have a normal curve, and we're told that the average, the mu, is 9.6, and the standard deviation, in other words, the sigma, is 1. Okay, so because we're told this is a normal curve, we have this picture in our mind, okay? We have our bell curve. And we know with our bell curve, it's perfectly symmetrical. And dead center here is whatever your average is, which in this case is a 9.6. Okay, so far so good. Now, a lot of times these problems say find the probability, blah, 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 just like in part B. If you're trying to find the probability, then on the calculator, and again, I'm talking about part B here, then you're going to be using the second distribution and you're going to be using this normal CDF. Okay, so hopefully that's what you use in part B. So in part B, they give you some data values, 8.9, 10.6, and they want you to find the percent. So given data, find percent. That's when you use this normal CDF. Well, in part C, they're giving you a percent. They're giving you this percent here, this 30%, and they want you to find the data values. So it's like it's the opposite direction of part B, okay? So when they give you a percent and they want you to come up with the data values, that's when you're going to be using this inverse norm here, okay? So let me pull up my whiteboard. They want you to find the data values such that the middle 30% of men are between those two values. Now, I'm a picture person. I have to draw a picture. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to find a data value that's right here and a data value that's right here, just trying to guesstimate the picture so that between that blue data value and this blue data value, and it should be symmetrical, it would be that this area under the curve is 30% of the total. Okay, so we're going to find those two blue points separately. Okay, now how do we do that? So again, if you're told find the data value given a percent, we're going to be using inverse norm. Okay, for inverse norm, you need to tell it 3 values. Depending on the version of the calculator that you have, it may or may not prompt you and ask you for these specific 3 values, and I'll show you what I mean there in a second. But basically, the first value is going to be area to the left under the curve of the number that you're looking for. Let me say that again. Area to the left of the number that you're looking for. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of jot that down underneath here. Area to the left of the guy that you're looking for, then mu, then sigma. So the main tricky part of these inverse norms is knowing that that first number has to be a decimal between 0 and 1, and it's the area under the curve of the number that you want. Okay, now what do we know? We know this area, this green area, is 30%. Okay. We also know that this curve is symmetrical. You should be able to fold it in half on that dotted line and everything should line up. And we also know that the total area under the curve is 100%, in other words, 1. Okay, so if we need the whole area under the curve to add to 1, we have that middle bit to be 0.3. I'm thinking the part that we have unaccounted for at this moment is 0.7. So those two unshaded areas on the ends, those tails, must together give me that 0.7. So that 0.7 divided by 2, I'm going to divide by 2 because we have 2 spaces here, would give me a 0.35 here and a 0.35 here, because I need that total area under the curve to be 1. Are we with me so far? Okay, so now our job is to find my two little blue numbers there along the number line. Let's do the one here first. So if I want to find that red line, I need to use inverse norm, and I need to put in 3 values. The first value is the area under the curve to the left of that red line. That's the number I'm looking for. Well, in that case, that's this 0.35. Do we agree? Okay, so 0.35 is our first number. And the mu and sigma are just going to be given in the problem. Now I'll input this in the calculator in a second. Okay, and that's for that first red line. So far, so good. We'll input that in a second. Okay, that's for the first red line. Now for, let's use green. For this other line, I'm going to use inverse norm. And I need to tell it 3 values. Area to the left of that number, and then mu and sigma. So it's the area to the left that's tricky. So in this case, the area to the left is going to involve that 0.30 and the 0.35, because both of those are to the area to the left of that green line. Do you agree with me there? So in that case, we're going to have 0.65, because that's the 0.3 and the 0.35 added together, and then mu and sigma as given. So the trick for these problems is first knowing to use the inverse norm, and then secondly, knowing that that first number is area to the left. By all means, draw a picture. Okay, so how do we put that in the calculator? So I'm going to go down to inverse norm. Now, your screen may or may not look like this. It depends on the operating system of your calculator. Yours might just come to a screen that says inverse norm with the parentheses. Well, then you just have to type in, just like I have on my whiteboard, each of these numbers separated by a comma and then push enter. This operating system, this is a newer version of the calculator on the screen here, it directly tells you these are the 3 numbers that it needs, okay? So for this first number, I'm going to use that first inverse norm. We have 0.35, we have 0, and we have, oh, sorry, I lied, we had 9.6, and we have 1. Okay, so now on my screen, once I push enter, it said inverse norm, and then these 3 numbers separated by commas. So if the calculator didn't have that screen like we just saw, you would just type it in like this. And when you push enter, you get this value. Let me see what the directions say. It says to round to 4 decimal places. So this first inverse norm is 9.2147, okay? 9.2147. That's the lower number along that x-axis there, so that between that red line and then the next number that we're going to find, which is the green line, between those 2 numbers, we get 30% of the data. All right, so now we're going to do the inverse norm to get the upper number. And most of this is going to be the same as before, it's just that now we have 0.65 because that's the area to the left of that number. 9.6 is still the mu, 1 is still the sigma. 0.65, 9.6, 1. And again, round to 4 decimal places, and I'm getting 9.9853. Okay, and that again, that's this upper number. So it's between those 2 blue numbers that we found that, let's look at the story of what they're talking about here, that 30% of American men consume between those 2 weights of sodium. Okay, double check that I didn't get off on those numbers in any way. It looks pretty good. All right, so hopefully that helps out with problem 1 here. You are going to see a lot of those problems show up on this homework. You know, if it says find the probability, then you use normal CDF. If it says here is the probability, find the data, that's an inverse norm. So scrolling through the homework, you know, looking at 2D, here's the percent, find the data value, that's going to be an inverse norm. Looking at question 3, here's these percents, find the data, that's going to be an inverse norm, okay? The trickiest thing is to draw this picture and figure out where these little percents lay, because it's tricky to figure out this area to the left sometimes, okay? Like in this case, it says the fastest 4%. That means we'd be looking at a bell curve like this. We'd be looking for a data value right here, and the 4% would be up here. So we would be using the 96% as the area to the left. So that's where it gets tricky, okay? But first step in these problems is to know when to use which button. Question 4, looking part F, you know, here they're telling you the 75th percentile, okay? That's kind of like a percentage. Find the data value, that's an inverse norm. Okay, so hopefully that helps you out with knowing where to go with the problem. Let me know if you have questions from there. Good luck.